Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Teacher Luke here of your Pinay IELTS teacher. Today it's all about our speaking test, specifically our speaking part 2. So, a lot of the people may have experienced this. I personally had it before. Speaking part 2 was my Waterloo. It's the thing that makes me kind of nervous and anxious going to the test because simply part 2 is when you are the one making all of the conversations and your examiner is just listening to you talk for 2 minutes. That could be a lot of that could be really nerve wracking, especially because you're sort of like doing an impromptu or spontaneous speaking. So let's look at the general approach on your speaking test. We do know that the task one is sort of like an introduction or an interview. It's the perfect chance to establish a rapport, a connection with your examiner, and also the questions are easy so that it allows you to warm up, okay, get a whole vibe of the exam. However, if you shift to task 2 or part 2 of the speaking test, this is what you call the long turn. This is you're handed on a task card or a cue card, and you have 1 minute to prepare for it. And after 1 minute, you have to speak for 2 minutes. You might think 2 minutes is short, but when you're actually speaking for 2 minutes, that seems like forever. Okay? And your task 3 is a lot like a discussion. So it goes back to that conversational type of exam, just like in task 1, only that the questions are a bit more abstract now. It's no longer the easy questions like your task 1. However, today we are going to focus on task 2. Okay, how do we talk for 2 minutes? How do we get a high band score knowing that 2 minutes is such a long time and we could be encountering a lot of errors? We could have a lot of challenges along the way, and things might not turn out the way we expect ourselves to perform for this task. Okay, so as you see in the picture, one person is holding a paperwork and the other is speaking while the other one is listening. This gives us a picture of how it would look like on your task 2. You're the only one speaking, and your examiner is just listening to you all throughout. Now, as I've said, it could be really nerve wracking. Why? You are just looking at your examiner, and sometimes, you're looking at his or her nonverbals. And you're thinking to yourself, you wanted a validation. Am I saying the right words? Am I saying the right thing? Am I making sense? Have I been repeating what I've just said? Do I still have enough time to elaborate? Or is 2 minutes up? Or did I even make 1 minute? So all of these things running in your head while you're going through your speaking. And so that is the biggest challenge. Plus, coupled with you're given a task card, you have these things to consider that you have to say. Okay, you only have 1 minute to prepare for that. So how can you make sure that you were able to say everything that you need to say within the 2 minute time frame? Okay, so the good news is that we have 1 minute preparation. So this 1 minute is our lifesaver. It actually is the part that's very crucial for you to ace your exam. 1 minute does the magic, you guys. So you think that 1 minute is short. However, if you use it effectively and efficiently, 1 minute is your lifesaver. Trust me. So let's take a look at here. You need to create a quick outline within 1 minute. So remember, you will be given a paper and a pen to write to, whether that's paper-based test or computer-based test. You will have access to something that you can write. Okay, use that. Please do not be like others that they would just rather go with the 1 minute. They would just start with speaking and not jotting down notes or writing down notes or creating an outline. It's given to you anyways, so just use it. Use it to your advantage. So you have to create a quick outline, very, very quick, because 1 minute can fly by too fast. You have to think of a creative introduction. What is this creative introduction? Most common mistake is that the task card or the question given to them now serves as their introduction once they begin their 2 minute to speak. And that's not really a way to show that you are good in speaking because you just read the question and you made that your introduction. So Essentially, just like in your writing test, they might omit that from your total number of words because you just copied it exactly as a question. So I will teach you how to create a different introduction, something that's captivating, something that would entice your examiner to listen to what you're about to say. Because remember, you have to make an impact on your introduction. And seemingly smoothing that out for you in your introduction gives you that momentum to keep going and keeping it strong, keeping it tight together while you're finishing your 2 minutes. Okay. Now, when you create your outline, just list down 2 to 3 ideas per bullet point. You don't want it too much because you don't really have time to write a lot in your 1 minute. So just put keywords, short keywords, just so that there is a reminder for you, or it will serve as a guide when you are lost somewhere within that 2 minutes. You can just glance on your notes and remember, oh, this is what I have to say next. This is the word that I have to expound next. Okay, so just very short, 2 to 3 ideas per bullet point. Then you have to follow the flow of the task card. This is the beauty of having an outline. Listing 2 to 3 ideas per bullet point allows you to milk it out, to really taking the time to elaborate so you have more than enough to cover that 2 minutes. Because when you don't do your outline and or you only keep one word per bullet point, the tendency is you finish right away and the examiner is still not gesturing you to stop. So he would say continue because you still have more time to talk about. And the danger is that you're already done with what you wrote, or you never wrote anything, so you don't know how to continue. The tendency is you start again or over again and your ideas are just everywhere. Like it's scattered everywhere, and you might have challenges to finishing your sentences or knowing the direction where you want to head. So please use that 1 minute to create an outline. Your outline will be your guide. It will just redirect you how to go through it and how to finish all that you needed to finish on your speaking test. So write only keywords. As I've said, you don't have much time within that 1 minute. Okay, so now let's look at the task card. This is the same task card I shown earlier. You are to describe an occasion when you had to wait a long time for someone or something to arrive. You should say who or what you were waiting for, how long you had to wait, why you had to wait a long time, and explain how you felt about waiting a long time. Now, this is almost always the case with a task card. You have this kind of background scenario, general overview what you're about to say, and then they're going to enumerate through bullet points what are the specific things that you must say within that 2 minutes. Okay, so I'll give you 1 minute. Let's have a short challenge here. I'll give you 1 minute. Write down your keywords for all these bullet points and perhaps think of a creative way to introduce what you're about to say. All right. Some people would just read, describe an occasion when you had to wait a long time for someone. Don't copy these words, guys. Be creative in how you introduce what you're about to say. All right. So we have about 30 minutes left. You should be writing 2 to 3 ideas per bullet point. Make it 3 so you have enough to elaborate. Okay. This is tested and proven, guys. If you have 3 ideas per bullet point, that should be enough to cover 2 minutes. Especially if you use your time wisely and you really take the time to explain per word on your bullet point. Okay, so 10 more seconds to go. Wow, that seems very, very fast, you guys. But the more you get used to this activity, the better you get with your time. Okay, so 1 minute is up, you guys. Now it's time. Let's look at your notes. This is what I wrote in mine. So remember when I said that you have to have a creative introduction? This is what I wrote in my introduction. I would start off by saying this is something recent that happened. I did not expect it to happen. So those are the 2 things at the top of my head that I was able to write in my 1 minute note. And then I would go ahead and write the bullet points. So who or what you were waiting for, I said Kate. Kate is my childhood best friend. And we were to have a day off. So I'm going for a scenario wherein we're really busy people and we decided to just hang out together, do some catch up. and she's my friend, so Kate. And then how long I had to wait? I said 2 hours. I had to wait for her for 2 hours in the mall where we're supposed to meet. And then I tried calling her. Now, notice, guys, that very crucial. Saying where I waited and what happened is not necessarily a part of my task card. So some of you may make the mistake of just writing how long you literally have to wait. Like that's the only thing you put on your bullet point. But remember when I said you have to have 2 to 3 ideas per bullet point. Why? Because if you only have one idea there, you'll go by with this answer too fast and you'll move on to the next bullet point and you'll move on to the last bullet point. And for all you know, you still have 1 minute left to answer or to speak. So that's why you have to branch out your ideas. Just because it says how long you had to wait, I really said 2 hours. But I branched out and said I waited in the mall, so I added where I waited and what I did while I was waiting, which was to call her, but she didn't answer. So see how I branch out from one question to creating 2 to 3 ideas. Because that's my goal, guys. 2 to 3 ideas. Much better if you have 3 ideas. So I just keep it 3 ideas. Okay, then next bullet point, why you had to wait a long time. So what is the reason? I said that Kate woke up late, then she got stuck in traffic. Okay, that is the scenario that I'm creating in my head. So remember, guys, when you write your outline, you are free to create a story in your head. It seems like you're just creating a scenario. But you know what? Much better is if you talk about something you experience or something you know. Because then you don't really have to think anymore what to say. You're going inside of yourself and really authentically sharing a particular experience that is similar to what the task card is asking. In that way, you will never run out of ideas. So always speak about something you know or you experience. If you don't have any of those within the given task card, get another person's experience. Something that your sister might have shared to you, your best friend might have shared to you. You can use that as a basis for your story. Then you have something to talk about. Because really, the struggle is with when people don't know what to say. You only don't know what to say if you're thinking too much on the external. You're trying to create stories that has never happened to you. So, always remain authentic to your own experience and your knowledge, or you can adapt someone else, but there's still a foundation of that story, something that you can work on so that you can improve on your fluency. Remember, fluency is the first scoring rubric on your speaking test. So, you can go away without having higher vocabulary. You can go away with not having too much grammatical range or grammar range. You can have some errors in your accuracy. You might even have some trouble doing cohesive and cohesionness. But fluency is something that you must have no matter what. This is the only way we can get a band score 7 and above is if you are fluent. Okay, so do not sacrifice fluency. Okay, so no matter what, talk about what you know and you're experiencing, or what you heard before, or what you heard your friends said before. Adapt, guys. Okay? But if, just in case, you don't really have any background idea with the task card, that's the time I suggest for you to do some storytelling. And for you to be successful at that, you must keep on practicing. You must keep on exposing yourselves to different task cards, different practices, so that when you encounter different questions, you can train yourself to do an outline within 1 minute. That's where all the thinking happens, in that 1 minute note. So if you miss on creating an outline, you bet you're going to have trouble in your speaking test. So 1 minute is a lifesaver, as I've said. All right, moving forward. Last one is you have to explain how you felt about waiting a long time. So I said I was angry, but then I understood where she was coming from. And in fact, after that, she suggested that we will have a makeup for the time that was lost. So again, the question is only asking you to explain how you felt, but it doesn't mean that that's the only thing I'm going to talk about. Yes, I was angry, but I also said eventually I understood her, and eventually we decided that we'll make up for it. Okay, this is what you call branching out. When you say 2 to 3 ideas, doesn't have to stick exactly the way it is asking on the bullet point. You stick with it first, but then you branch out to close topics you can add so that you can enrich your ideas. All right, I hope that's clear. Always 2 to 3 ideas, you guys, so that you have enough room to elaborate. You have more ideas to touch base once you begin speaking. Okay, now let's move forward. What is your guide for your speaking? So, as I've said, you have your introduction. This is your creative introduction. Please do not copy what is on the task card. Don't do that. You have to be creative in your introduction. 1 to 2 sentences is good. What is the good part about an introduction? It makes you warm up. It sets the mood for you to gain your momentum up until you start on the actual content of your speaking, which is going through the details per bullet point. All right? For the first bullet point, you need to say 2 to 3 sentences based on your 2 to 3 keywords. What does that mean? It means 1 keyword per sentence. You don't use all of your 2 to 3 keywords in one sentence. That defeats the whole purpose of having 2 to 3 ideas, you guys. One idea, expound it in a sentence, then go to the next word, expound it in a sentence, and go to the next keyword and expound it in a sentence. Okay, so now essentially you are now creating 3 sentences for your first bullet point. Okay, before you transition to your second bullet point, which again now has 2 to 3 sentences because of your new 2 to 3 keywords for that bullet point. So you have to take the time to elaborate per bullet point and per keyword of your bullet point. Okay, don't say it all in one sentence. And then, same is true when you go to your third bullet point. You take the time to create 1 sentence per keyword. And then when you reach your closing statement, you can do so by closing it off with 1 to 2 sentences, just like what you did in your introduction. It's just like a summary of everything you said, or just something you can touch base on something that you want to do further about it, or moving forward that this is what you want to do. So for example, the task card is asking you about the time that you had to wait it a long time, the task card that I showed you earlier. So in your closing statement, you could say something like, well, in the future, I don't want that to happen again because that was such a hassle when I experienced it. So hopefully I can manage my time even better. So that's how you do your closing statement, guys. You can say something that you want to happen in the future. And what is the beauty of that? The good thing about that is you're able to use a variety of your grammar tenses. You're able to use future tense. Whereas the task card is just asking you something that happened in the past. Now you're start to share something you want to do in the future. That's an extra tip, guys. You can start using future tenses by just expressing what you want to happen as opposed to how you experienced. Okay, so I will show you. So, before we go there, these are winner tips, you guys. Band 8 score and above for your speaking test. This is what I did differently. My first IELTS speaking was 7. Then I retook it. I got an 8, and my last speaking test was 8.5, almost near perfect 9, because of these things. Now, if you are able to take this by heart and you're able to put it in practice consistently and really putting a lot of effort to it, I promise you, you will see the results in your band score. I'm a firm believer that if you put in all the effort and if you set your mind to it, like really practice the right things you need to practice, then it will eventually show up in your band score. So let's go straight to it. Number 1, you have to speak at length for 2 minutes. Only stop when the examiner tells you so. This is a tricky part because if you go by too fast in your outline, you'll find that, oh, oopsie, I don't have any more words to say. I don't have any more topic to touch base. But the examiner is gesturing to go on. You're still not done. So what are you going to do? Tendency is you'll start going back again, diverging to another topic again and stuff like this, so that your coherence is now nowhere to be found because you're going topsy-turvy, you're beating around the bush. So that's why, as I've said, your outline or your 1 minute note taking is lifesaver, guys. So that allows you to maximize your 2 minutes so that you can speak at length. So remember, only stop when the examiner tells you to do so. No matter if you're not yet done with your outline, that's fine. The best thing is just keep talking. Don't think about the time. Be focused on what you're saying. Be focused on your outline, taking the time talking about each keyword. Don't think about the time. Let the examiner worry about the time for you. Once he stops you, then you know that I'm good to go. I was able to finish my 2 minutes. All right. Second bullet point, be creative in your introduction. As I've said earlier, you don't want to repeat the same introduction in your task card. So what do I mean by that? Some people would say, this is the task card, right? Describe an occasion when you had to wait a long time. So they begin with saying, the examiner would say, all right, time's up. You may now begin. And then the examinee would say, well, I want to discuss an occasion that I had to wait for a long time for someone or something to arrive. This was blah, blah, blah. Please don't do that. That's a very generic introduction, something that's really boring, something that has no originality and does not establish a rapport. What you want to do instead is bring in your own introduction that somehow could entice the examiner to listen to you. So say something like, well, this is actually a very difficult topic to talk about because I was really pissed off when this happened. I had to wait for my friend because she made me wait for 5 hours. Okay, you can say something like that. Or you could say, this was definitely a learning experience, and I will share you why. I had to wait for my package, which I ordered internationally, and it went through a lot of bizarre things. I had to wait for it 6 months for it to arrive. So, guys, what am I saying here? I'm saying be creative with your introduction. Don't do generic introduction, okay? Next, what is this? Try to begin with complex sentence already. This is an extra teacher look tip that perhaps you won't be hearing from any other coaches online. This is my own tip, and this is how I do it. Remember that in your band score, right? In your scoring rubric. So if you're not familiar, please research how you're being graded on the speaking test or watch my earlier videos talking about band scores. So for you to go past a band score of 7 and above, you need to have variety in your grammar range. Specifically, your grammar tenses and your sentence structure. So when you say sentence structure, you have your simple, compound, complex sentences. So usually, when you want to have a high band score, you want majority of your answers to be complex sentence structure. These are sentences that start with a subordinate conjunction. Remember in high school or college, you encountered words like independent clauses, dependent clauses. And why is that tricky? Because in reality, we don't really answer or converse with people using complex sentences. What's natural for us are simple sentences or compound. Compound sentences is when you use and, for, but, yet, or these coordinating conjunctions to connect two ideas into one. Those are usually the way we elaborate things. But for complex sentences, it's not really common for us to use this type of sentence structures when we're just normally conversing with people. But you gotta get used to it. As I tell my students, you gotta get used to answering with complex sentences all the time. How do we do that for speaking part 2? So as I've said, this is a teacher look tip. You begin your introduction already with a complex sentence. What does that do? Because if you begin your introduction, it's the part where you really have control and still thinking consciously what to say. When you're already caught up within that 2 minutes and you're really starting to dig deep in your ideas, you might find that you don't really have the time thinking, am I saying it in a complex way? Am I saying it in a compound way? So you're really just focused on being fluent. You're really just focused on the rush of different ideas. You don't have time thinking, am I saying it in a complex way? So if you begin in using complex sentence in your introduction, then you nail it down already. You tick that off from your checklist. You were able to use a complex sentence at the introduction. And then for the rest of the things, no matter you're using compound and simple, it's fine because you already establish that you're able to use complex sentence in your introduction. So for example, when you create an introduction for this one, describe an occasion when you had to wait a long time for someone or something to arrive, I could say something like, well, um, despite my father being one of those people who manage time efficiently, there was really this disappointing time that I had to wait for him for 6 hours. So the word despite blah blah blah, despite is a subordinate conjunction, and so that makes it a complex sentence structure. So I always want to start my introduction using complex sentence as a structure so that I no longer have to think of it once I begin speaking. So that I was able to show that I can use complex sentence structure at the introduction. Okay, so that's one of my tips. Next is you use transition words or connecting words when going from one bullet to another. So remember your task card, I'll show you here. You have to be able to use transition words, not just the word end. So, and so. Those are what students always like to use. And who or what you were waiting for. I waited for my friend Kate, and I had to wait for her for 2 hours, and because she got stuck in a topic. So stop using "and" as your transition words, guys. There are different ways to connect your ideas from one to another. And the more you use more of these transition words, it shows that you have a very cohesive and coherent answers. So you could use nevertheless, moreover, in fact, in addition, in connection, thereafter, then after. For instance, okay, there are different transition words that you can use out there. So research on that, be familiar with them, use them as much as you can to show coherence and cohesiveness in your answers. Okay, you may change your grammar tense during your closing statement. Use a variety of sentence structures too. So grammar tenses, again, going back to grammar range. Grammar range, remember two things, tenses of verbs and sentence structures. So this is another teacher looks tip. For my summary or for my closing statement, I always use a different grammar tense. So as I've said earlier, I usually use future tense if the task card is asking something in the past. Okay, I use that for my closing statement. Or if the thing is asking something in the future, I close the statement by using something from the past. So I use a different grammar tense or tense of verb. So for example, explain why you had, this is the closing statement. Explain how you felt about waiting a long time. So I would say something like, well, of course, I felt disappointed and sad having have to wait a long time for my friend to arrive. I'm the kind of person who values his or her time. I like to be productive in my time. And so having experienced that was really a down thing for me. However, in the future, I hope that things will get better and that my friend will learn how to manage her time better so that in the future when we meet up and have these plans to catch up with one another, we won't encounter these types of things anymore. We will make use of our time more efficiently and effectively. So what did I do there, guys? The question is not asking about something in the future. It just said explain something about how I felt. But then I went over and beyond it by saying something about the future. What does that do? Aside from adding more details and expounding my answers to cover 2 minutes, what does that do? What that does, sorry, what that does is show that I have variety of my grammar tenses. I was able to explain the scenario in past tense, and then I use future tense to show something that I want to happen in the future. So that now gives me a high score on my grammar range in terms of tenses of verbs. Also, use variety of sentence structures, not just in your introduction, also in the content of your answers. I mean, the bullet points. That's why I told you guys, you got to get used to answering using complex sentences, not just simple and compound. Because you want to have at least 50% of your answers in the speaking test are complex sentence structures. That's the only way you get a high score, higher than 7 on your speaking test. Lastly, use idiomatic expressions. Now, it's already given that you should have good vocabulary. Vocabulary and idiomatic expressions falls under lexical resource, but I want to emphasize idiomatic expressions. So idiomatic expressions are these are expressions that native English users use. They may not be as literal as you think it would be. They're sort of expressions that have a different meaning if you put it in actual, but they're naturally used when they converse or have dialogues with each other. So samples of idiomatic expressions are um, break a leg, which means like good luck or wishing someone that they win. Okay, it's raining cats and dogs. We could also say something like feeling a bit under the weather, which means you're not feeling well. You could also say, what else? A lot of idiomatic expressions, but it's not rocket science. So you're saying it's not that difficult. Okay, so there are a lot of idiomatic expressions you can use. Please research on that. I do not recommend that you use unnecessary idiomatic expressions that are not relevant or not appropriate in the given topic. I had some coaches before, they tend to memorize all different idiomatic expressions and they're no longer appropriate for the topic. It's sort of like not so natural and it seems so forceful. So, research on 3 to 5 idiomatic expressions that you already know what they mean and you can naturally use in different sentences. Choose idiomatic expressions that are flexible in any type of dialogue, scenario, or conversation. They're flexible in terms of use. And use it as much as you can, especially for speaking part 2. Okay, why am I saying 3 to 5? Because remember, you still have speaking part 1 and part 3. So you don't want to repeat the same idiomatic expressions you already used in speaking part 2. So you want to have flexibility. You want to show that you have a strong vocabulary bank. And that includes having more than, having 3 to 5 idiomatic expressions and being able to use that on the entirety of your speaking test. Okay, now this is the task card. Remember, these are my notes or the keywords that I wrote in my 1-minute note. And this is my model answer. So let's take a look how I did that. This is my introduction. Since I have a long list of the times I had to wait, I decided to share with you a more recent encounter with my close friend Kate instead. This happened just a few weeks ago, and frankly, it still is fresh in my mind. As I've mentioned, so now I'm going to talk about Kate, my childhood best friend, and day off. As I've mentioned, Kate is like kin to me because we met way back when I was still in secondary school. Ever since then, she has always been a shoulder to lean on, especially during my challenging times. So then we agreed to meet up on a weekend so we can watch the latest movie release in the cinema and catch up with each other's lives. Then I would go on talking about how long I had to wait. Remember, 2 hours? I waited in the mall. I tried calling her, but no answer. So how did I say that? I would say something like, because we didn't want to miss out on the seats, we were set to meet an hour early at the entrance of the mall. Time went by so fast, and before I knew it, the movie that I bought tickets for has already started. Since Kate was still nowhere in sight, I got worried if something might have happened to her. Hence, I thought of giving her a ring, and thankfully she picked up. Okay, that was different because I said she didn't answer here, but last minute I changed it to saying that she picked up eventually. Okay, then I go to why you had to wait a long time. I said she woke up late, she was stuck in traffic. So, how did that manifest in the speaking test? I would say, as it turned out, she woke up late and had to rush to the bus station. But soon after she hopped on the bus, she got stuck in a traffic jam, causing further delay. As such, I had to wait for 2 hours before she finally arrived, which left me furious at first. Then lastly, explain how you felt about waiting a long time. My notes were I was angry, but then I was understanding, and we just decided to make up. So I said something like, rather than letting the negativity linger on, I decided to lighten up the mood when she saw me. Because she sincerely apologized, I resolved to let it go and still have fun for that day. After all, she did promise me that we will be watching another movie next week to make up for what happened. Okay? So let's see. This is a zoomed in overview of that answer. Now, if we want to analyze the things that I said for that, for speaking part two, these are all the lexical resource or vocabulary that I use. This includes your idiomatic expressions. So we have encounter, which means like this was an instance that I was involved with. Okay. Kin, when you say kin, this like family to you, someone really close to you. Shoulder to lean on is an idiomatic expression for someone that's someone who has your back, someone who's always been there for you, someone who is reliable when you're in need. That's why shoulder to lean on. Okay. Movie release, it's just saying what the latest movies are out there in the cinema. Okay. Catch up with each other's lives. It's just saying like you want to reconnect or you want to be updated about the recent things that happening in each other's lives. So you could say catch up. That's what you call a collocation, to do a catch up. All right. Miss out on the seat. So it's like saying you don't want to give the seat to someone else because you already bought tickets for that. So remember, we're talking about the movie here. You don't want to miss out on the seats. And then when you say time went by so fast, this is an idiomatic expression, or time flown so fast, time went by so fast. So it's like saying that you didn't realize that time was already passing before you, or that you already spent this time already. Okay. And then nowhere in sight, it's just saying that she still has not arrived. She still is not there. So nowhere in sight. It's an idiomatic expression. Say giving her a ring, or like calling her. I'm gonna give her a phone call, give her a ring. So it's also an idiomatic expression. And then she picked up. When you say she picked up, you're actually talking about she picked up the phone or she answered the call. Thankfully, she answered the call or she picked up. Traffic jam is also saying that there's a heavy traffic, and then it's like so rigid, nothing is moving at all. So you, instead of saying that it's a heavy traffic and the cars are not moving, you could just say traffic jam. She got stuck in a traffic jam. And when you say furious, it's also another way of saying angry, frustrated, mad. Okay, but this is a different vocabulary, something that's not usually what people use, but still a good vocabulary to use. So I was furious, I was mad, I was disappointed. And then you say negativity, also that feeling, same with furious, that feeling, that feeling of just being encompassed with a lot of anger and sadness. So it's negativity. And then lightening up the mood, perhaps this is an idiomatic expression as well. When you say lighten up the mood, you want to make things feel better for you. You want things to feel good for you. Okay. Resolved is a vocabulary if like you're like saying that I just chose to let it go. I resolved to letting it go. I decided to letting it go. Okay. Then make up. This is when you say you want to make up, you mean to say like you want to do something to make it better for what to make it better for what you did the last time, or so that you could make people feel better for that mistake, or that the thing that you did that wasn't right. You want to make things right for that person. So you're saying you want to make up. Okay? Now, if we look at the grammar range in terms of grammar tenses, look at all these green highlights, you would see that I have a variety of grammar tenses. There's past tense like decided, met, thought, hopped, okay, woke. And then you also have present participle, okay, have mentioned, past participle, had to wait, have happened, present participle, had to wait again, past participle. Okay, so also I have future tense, will be watching. Okay, that we will be watching another movie next week. So what am I trying to point here? I'm trying to point out is I have a variety of grammar tenses. Doesn't have to be everything. Even if you just choose two grammar tenses, present and future, past and present, present and future, doesn't matter. All you have to show is that you have a variety of your grammar tenses, because that in that way you can transition from one idea to another, and it shows that you have range in your grammar tenses. Okay? And then range in terms of sentence structure, remember I told you we want at least 50% of your answers in your speaking test are compound and complex sentences, or if you could go higher, the better. That's the only way you can get a higher score in your speaking test. Notice that at least here, perhaps I could say 80% of my answers are compound and complex sentences. So do your research, guys. Practice transforming simple sentences to compound and transforming simple sentences to complex sentences. Then you put it verbally. Once you practice writing it, put it in verbal. Practice answering in complex sentences. So for example, if I ask you, do you like having pets at home? And your answer is yes, I like having pets because I think they take out the stress in you. That's a simple sentence. How do we make that a complex? You can begin with a subordinate conjunction. So if I ask the same question, do you like having pets? I would say something like, well, despite the difficulty taking care of pets, I still like to have them around because they could take the stress off my shoulder. That's a complex sentence. It's the same idea. It's still simple to listen to it. I didn't use any difficult vocabulary, so don't confuse vocabulary with sentence structure. It doesn't mean that it's a complex sentence, that the content are complex. They can just be a simple basic vocabulary. But what we mean by sentence is the way they are structured. By using despite, which is a subordinate conjunction, it creates a conditional in the sentence. Despite the difficulty taking care of pets, I still want them around. Okay, so that's what complex sentences are. So research on compound and complex sentences as much as possible. We want you speaking more of them rather than just simple sentences, which is one idea with one sentence. All right. Now let's look at transition words. Remember, transition words are important for your cohesion and cohesiveness. So, frankly, as I have mentioned, so then, hence, as it turned out, as such, after all. So instead of just saying so, and, or, however, these are the common words. Nothing bad if you want to use them. But we want to use a variety of transition words that are appropriate for the purpose you want them for. There are different transition words for order, like firstly, secondly, thirdly. There's a transition word for summary, in conclusion, in a nutshell. Okay. There's a transition word for being specific. For example, in specific, for instance. All right. If you want to give transition word for example, as an example. Okay. So to put emphasis, as I have mentioned, okay, in detail. All right, so there are different transition words out there. You have to research, find out what works for you, practice using them in writing, and then translate them verbally. You have to keep practicing verbally. That's the only way you can get better in your speaking. And then, these are the summary of the tips on the exam day. Be conversational and build a rapport. Take it easy. So this manifests in your introduction. Your introduction, by being creative, allows you to loosen up, get your examiner to be engaged. So in essence, you're building a rapport, and you're now laying up a good foundation that you can take momentum when you start explaining your bullet points. You can pause necessarily to gather your thoughts. In that way, you avoid stuttering. Stuttering is when you keep saying the is what you call stuttering. We normally have that. Even the best speakers have that, but we want it as minimal as we can. The only way is to practice, 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 and at the same time, get the habit of pausing. It's okay to pause, and I mean don't stop, okay? Take the necessary pause to get yourself together, to get these ideas structured before you speak. In that way, you don't have to unnecessarily stutter and repeat your ideas. Another way is for you to use your fillers. So in a different video, you please research on my earlier video about speaking. Fillers is when you use some phrases or sentence at the beginning to buy you time. So for example, filler statements like, Well, that's a difficult topic to ask. Or let me see. It's been a long time since I thought of that actually. Or you could say, well, this is an interesting topic to say, but I guess. So these are just phrases that you want to say at the beginning to buy you extra time to gather your thoughts before you start actually answering the task card. Okay. Next, use your outline as a guide to build your ideas and to avoid repetitions. Of course, that's what an outline does. That's what your 1 minute magic does. Your outline will guide you so that you don't have to keep going around the bush saying the same things over and over again. It guides you from the start till the end. So as long as you take the time expounding on each keyword of your bullet point, then that should be enough to cover 2 minutes. Next, you talk about what you know and experience. I already said this earlier. Remain authentic. That's the only way you can become fluent and you can improve your fluency, and just really share your ideas and just speak for the entire 2 minutes. You only get mental blocked. You only stop if you're trying too hard to talk about something you don't know and you're not familiar. That's the only way that you stop talking altogether. But once you come from a place of experience, of knowledge, then you won't have a problem with your fluency. Okay? Use relevant vocabulary and collocations. You already know this. Vocabulary, lexical resource, as well as idiomatic expression. So 2 to 3 in your um, speaking part 2. All right? But I suggested to know 3 to 5 because you still have speaking part 1 and speaking part 3. Use varying tenses of verbs. You already know why. This is for your grammar range. So you can use the storytelling method. Use something from the past, present, or future. Use varying sentence structures. You already know this. As much as possible, try to shy away from using simple sentence structures all the time. Start using and becoming more comfortable expounding your answers using compound and most especially complex sentence structures. Lastly, pace yourself when you speak. Pronounce your words correctly. Remember, pronunciation is also one of your scoring rubric. We don't necessarily have to copy the accent of Americans or native speakers or British. We only need to adapt their language to our culture. And as long as you're able to pronounce it correctly, the way the word should be pronounced, your accent won't matter. As long as your accent won't get in the way of you elaborating your ideas and be easily understood by your examiner, then you are fine. You're okay. You don't have to really copy any other people's accent. Okay? So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I was able to give you an idea how to grow through speaking part 2, which for quite frankly, for a lot of people like me, that was my Waterloo. But hopefully with this tips that I've proven effective, you're able to adapt it and you're able to overcome that fear of doing part 2. Okay, and that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Teacher Luke of Pinay IELTS Teacher. Please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell button to be notified whenever I have new updates. This is the place where you can get free tips, tricks, strategies, and tutorials such as this one to help you in your journey for your IELTS preparation. So I'll see you again next time. Thanks so much. Bye.